The man persisted. Hey, I'll pay well. 200, will that do? 300, surely 300 is enough. Aunt Amanda didn't even pause to consider. She frowned and said, No matter the price, we're not selling. Leave this young lady be. You won't get this price anywhere else, he argued. Unnoticed by us, a crowd had gathered, watching the commotion. Hey, isn't that the crazy widow from the alley? When did she get a daughter? Her man died young. She must have gotten lonely. Huh? I heard her husband abandoned her long ago, probably has mistresses elsewhere. That girl looks familiar. Isn't she James Wilson's daughter? The one whose mother took her own life? You're right, it is. The two most pitiful souls from the East and West Ends have come together. You should take the 300. Don't be greedy. Just the other night, I heard that madwoman causing a ruckus again. Did anyone else hear it? Shh, be quiet, all of you. Watch out for that little hoodlum. At first it was one dog barking, then two, and soon a pack was howling, but they didn't know why they were barking. The busybodies formed a wall as dense as a blockade, their claws out, ready to attack. Although strangers to us, they slung mud and insults, casually defining a person with a few words. Aunt Amanda's lips were pressed tight, her hand trembling as she held mine. In that moment, something clenched at my heart as rage surged from my chest to my throat and eyes. To speak ill of me was one thing, but why drag Aunt Amanda into this? She was already in so much pain, why add pointless malice? I clenched my fists and scanned their despicable faces, breaking free of Aunt Amanda's grasp, and charged at them with all my might, pushing them aside. Get lost. All of you, get out of here. Scum, beasts, wimps. You'll have your mouths and butts rot. You are the crazies. You're worse than dogs. I had never cursed at anyone before and didn't really know how. All the words I could muster were those my father had hurled at me, but their mouths spat out filthier insults. Just thinking about Aunt Amanda standing alone and helpless before them earlier made my anger surge even more. People are like that. The soft fear the strong fear the brazen, but the brazen fear the reckless. I rushed in all directions, tearing at whoever I could reach, screaming and cursing back at them just as they had done to me. In the chaos, a handful of my hair was yanked out, and my face was scratched painfully. Aunt Amanda tried to protect me. Her coat was torn, and her arms were pinched several times. They called me a little lunatic, so I showed them crazy. I spat at anyone I could catch, spittle flying everywhere, and for a moment they cursed back, but didn't dare to come closer. A flash of Ethan Clark the night he beat my father crossed my mind. My reflexes were faster than my thoughts, so fast that I didn't realize I was imitating him. I spat out fiercely at them. Utter another filthy word at my mother, and you'll wish you kept your tongues. I'll bite you to death. People are drawn to strength, and the first step to emulating strength often begins with imitation. I continued, my presence domineering. By the time we reached the alley's end, my legs gave in. This was my first fight and the boldest I'd ever been. Aunt Amanda caught me quickly. Her lips were pale and trembling slightly. It hurts, doesn't it, Emily? I am useless, she said. I can't even feel these minor scratches. I have thick skin. I stood firm, patting my chest. Aunt Amanda, I'll protect you from now on. She held me, crying and laughing at the same time. That day, when we returned, Ethan saw our disheveled state. His expression darkened instantly. He asked Aunt Amanda, but she wouldn't say anything. I couldn't hold back and recounted every detail of how they bullied Aunt Amanda. Without a word, he grabbed a wooden stick and stormed out. Ethan Clark, come back. You can't go hitting people. Aunt Amanda shouted sternly. His forehead veins bulged as he spun around and shouted, It's always like this. So what? I'm supposed to just watch you two get bullied? She closed her eyes slowly, tears streaming down. Can't you just stay calm for your mother's sake? In the silent standoff, the man finally relented. Few children can reject their mother's tearful pleas. I couldn't, and neither could Ethan. After Aunt Amanda went back to her room, Ethan sat by the door, staring at the osmanthus tree emotionlessly. I sat beside him. Whispering in his ear, I said, Ethan, they say revenge is a dish best served cold. I've got all those who bullied Aunt Amanda locked in my memory. To convince him, I began counting on my fingers. There's this 40-something woman with short hair and buck teeth looking like garlic. She started the insults. The one in a pink dress with long hair and single eyelids dragging a child. She pinched Aunt Amanda several times. And there's the middle-aged woman with a loud voice like fireworks. She had the worst things to say. And. Lastly, the woman with long hair and a flat nose, wearing makeup like she's in an opera. She's the one who scratched me and pulled my hair. He turned his head, trying to suppress a laugh. I had no idea you held grudges. He reached out, touching my forehead where 3 nail scratch marks were evident. Does it hurt? I wanted to say no, but I spoke the truth instead. It hurts a lot. They almost left me bald, too. Ethan pulled me onto his lap and then placed my hand on his head. Here, you can pull back. I felt the softness of his hair shaking my head. An eye for an eye. I have to pull back from that opera singer. All right, he said. I'm not sure what Ethan did behind the scenes, but after that, Aunt Amanda and I were treated with polite respect at the market. Nobody dared to gossip to our faces anymore, and whatever was said behind our backs was another story. I later learned that Ethan had shaken out the dirty laundry of every family with even a small skeleton in the closet. The woman who accused others of being unfaithful had been caught cheating by her husband. The one who said nobody wanted her had a husband who never came home, keeping mistresses left and right. The one gossiping about men cheating got AIDS because her husband sought prostitutes. Ethan took a loudspeaker and broadcasted these affairs all over town. He said, if there was one person in town who didn't know about these misdeeds, it would be his failing. In the end, karma had its way with them, and now each was too busy dealing with their own troubles. If I were to draw an analogy, I would imagine Aunt Amanda as a tree, not tall or strong, marked by the years, having witnessed joy and sorrow, possessing a broad and accommodating calmness. She may seem fragile, but her roots are deep and intertwined, making her immovable by the winds. And Ethan was like a wild wolf, bound by a tough vine. He momentarily sheathed his claws and fangs, his wildness gradually masked by the tree's tenderness and solidity. But it was just a covering, the barely contained strength still visible under the surface. 14 painful days are long and hard, but happiness vanishes in the blink of an eye. As school approached, I grew increasingly anxious. Living here was happiness, but this happiness was stolen, and my body was now healthier than ever. Going to school felt like a signal for the end, about to break the temporary comfort zone I had established. I eagerly thought of ways to deepen my bond with this family. After much thought, I woke up at 5 a.m, quietly did all the housework. When Ethan came downstairs, I had just served breakfast. He looked around, then at me. You've taken my job. What am I supposed to do? I pointed to the fried rice with eggs and smiled. You eat breakfast. He scoffed and sat down. After a few bites, his pace of chewing slowed. He looked up, tentatively asking, Do you think it tastes good? I glanced at my half-eaten fried rice, puzzled. It's delicious. I'm not picky. To me, as long as rice is cooked, any dish is tasty. His hand holding the chopsticks trembled slightly as he questioned, Are you serious? Really, it's good. I'm the best cook in our family. My mother's cooking was a mess. My father couldn't cook at all. In fact, even when my father was drunk and cursing, he never said my cooking was bad. He gasped. Then your taste buds must have run away on a family outing. If I say it's good, I feel like I'm lying to myself, but saying it's bad might hurt someone's confidence. So let's just say your cooking is suitable for famine times. Ah? He said meaningfully. It would discourage anyone's appetite. If Ethan's words were somewhat subtle, Aunt Amanda's were blunt. She tasted it and frowned deeply. Child, this fried rice isn't good. Don't make it again. Ethan remained silent. I inserted quietly, Actually, it's not bad. I think it's quite tasty. She replied, Emily, there's no need to cover for him. It's clearly lacking in color, fragrance, and taste. Even pigs would run a mile after a bite. I touched my nose. My father loved my fried rice and never ran after eating it, which is strange considering he's less than a pig. For the first time, I realized my cooking skills were indeed terrible. I had to give up the idea of cooking. So in the afternoon, I watched a spy thriller with Aunt Amanda for the nth time. As she grew anxious for the protagonist, I comforted her with memories of her past complaints. Don't worry, someone's coming to save him. When she was outraged by the villain's success, I chimed in, It's fine. He dies in the next episode. She just stared Sensing another word might bring her to tears, I quickly changed the subject. In the studio. Ethan sketched, I handed him pens, brought water when he was thirsty, massaged his back when he was tired. By the 10th time I refilled his cup, he grabbed my hand. I really can't drink anymore. I set down the pitcher and turned to wipe the table. You'll wear out the paint at this rate. He scooped me up and placed me on the tatami, pulling a blanket over me. Patting my head, he ordered, behave and sleep. During dinner, Aunt Amanda asked if I was starting school the next day. I slumped my head and nodded. Ethan inquired, need me to take you to school? I struggled to hold back tears and spoke slowly. No need. It's close by. The moment of parting made me realize how much I didn't want to leave, yet I couldn't think of a valid reason to stay. After a while, Aunt Amanda softly asked, So, Emily, what would you like for lunch tomorrow? I sniffled and kept eating. Mother and son exchanged glances. Ethan said thoughtfully, Surely the kid can't just stop coming home because of school, right? Aunt Amanda sighed. Then no one would want to dance with this old lady or go to the market with me. What a pity. In a place like this, finding another assistant as good and smart as you, who keeps everything tidy, would be quite sad. Hearing this, I raised my hand high above my head, swallowing the rice in my mouth quickly. I am willing. I was willing to do it all. Perhaps I couldn't control my emotions well. I blew a bubble with my nose, and it grew larger as I inhaled. Ethan held back laughter while handing me a tissue. You just eat too little and worry too much. Don't think about leaving. The Clarks can certainly afford to care for one more child. Aunt Amanda said that since the day I moved in, she never considered letting me go. I listened intently to every word. That day, I was overwhelmed by an unprecedented kindness that softened my entire being. 15. Some say the essence of life is being slapped, then offered a sweet date. For me, perhaps it's being given a sweet date, then a slap. That night before bed, I pondered how to apologize to Elizabeth Thompson and how to protect myself from campus violence. The next day at school, I learned that Elizabeth had resigned. Apparently, she was over 2 months pregnant, but the pregnancy was unstable, so her husband forced her to go home and rest. Our new homeroom teacher was a middle-aged woman, gentle but lacking in authority. After school, I was cornered in the classroom. They tossed a broom at me, the dirty end rolling after touching my foot, staining my new white shoes. If you don't finish sweeping, don't bother going home. You'll make a nice plaything in the restroom. My fist by my side tensed, then relaxed. This group fluctuated between maturity and childishness, finding their sense of existence and accomplishment through being different, yet they bullied the weak and feared the strong. They often discussed who to acknowledge as Big Brother, recently saying the tough guy from the alley was the most difficult and hadn't even managed to get tattoos for them at the shop. I cleaned the stain on the tip of my shoe with a tissue. Aunt Amanda had just bought these shoes for me. Hey, are you listening to me? The tall girl leading them looked impatient. I looked up, my tone steady. I heard you, but I won't sweep. She reached out to slap me. I did not dodge. Slap, slap hard. Ethan is my brother. If you don't kill me today, you'll have to wait for him to kill you tomorrow. She paused, glancing uncertainly at the others. I had played this scene over and over in my mind. What? Don't believe me? If you don't believe me, either come back with me to see for yourself or just wait for the parent-teacher conference tomorrow. It's best if you come with me. Once the door is closed, you can scream all you want, but there'll be no one to hear you. I performed my act of bullying to perfection, leaving them with little choice but to believe me for the moment. I walked out of the classroom and out of the school with no one daring to follow. I took a deep breath of relief, but all the talk was nothing compared to the effect of showing up in person. Back home, I pondered how to convince Ethan Clark to pretend to be my brother and go to the parent meeting for me. That night, Aunt Amanda Clark went to bed, and Ethan was busy tattooing someone. I sat next to him, being as clingy as I could, fanning him when it was hot, covering him with a blanket when it was cold, getting him water when he was thirsty, massaging his shoulders when they ached, and pounding his back when he was tired. Whenever he needed a tool, I had it disinfected and ready in his hand in a second. Occasionally, I'd compliment him, saying, "Your aesthetic sense is really good, and your skills are impressive." The tattoo customers teased Ethan, asking where he found such a considerate assistant. He continued working with his head down, calmly saying, "She just fell from the sky." The customers, amused to the point of forgetting their pain, laughed heartily. As the tattooing went on, I dozed off to the soft hum of the machine, and when I woke up, I was on a tatami mat and Ethan was just finishing up with his work. After the customer left, he took off his gloves and got straight to the point. "What is it? Just tell me." "Ah? Is it that obvious?" I rubbed my face. He didn't say a word, but his eyes clearly read, "You can't hide anything." I stammered, "It's just, there's a parent meeting tomorrow, and I was wondering if you could go for me?" Afraid he'd refuse, I added a brother at the end. His spirit lifted all at once, and he sighed. "Of course you remember your brother when you need something, but Ethan Clark when you don't." I guiltily touched my nose. Calling her Aunt Amanda felt natural, but saying brother just felt odd, especially since I had an accent and it sounded like the clucking of a hen laying eggs. I forced myself to call him brother a few more times. His smile was visible, and his beautiful eyes twinkled with amusement. "All right, I'll do it." I exhaled with relief, saying eagerly, "Brother, make sure you wear something with cut-off sleeves tomorrow to show off your big tattoo." I figured that, added to his fierce look, would really intimidate them. He paused, staring at me intently. "Have you been bullied at school? Tell me the truth." My heart trembled slightly, but after hesitating, I chose to confess and also told him about how I used his name to scare people today. "You look clueless, but you're actually pretty clever." He nodded and reassured me. "I got it. Just focus on your studies." Seeing that he wasn't angry, I pushed my luck. "Brother, you have to show off your big tattoo and scare them to death tomorrow." He was thoroughly confused. Where did I get a big tattoo? Strangely enough, although Ethan Clark was a tattoo artist, he didn't have any tattoos on himself. But no matter, I was prepared. My eyes sparkled as I pulled out a bunch of temporary tattoo stickers from my pocket and spread them on the table. "Brother, which do you prefer, the Azure Dragon or the White Tiger?" The next day, with the parent meeting nearly about to begin, I still hadn't seen Ethan Clark. I was worried he might have changed his mind at the last minute. On my 30th glance out the window, I finally spotted a familiar figure. The man strode in wearing a black leather jacket, sunglasses over his eyes, and classic Dr. Martens boots on his feet, walking briskly with his strong legs, looking every bit the suave, untamed character from a Hong Kong gangster movie. Once he sat next to me, the noisy classroom instantly fell silent. I patted my chest and whispered, "I thought you weren't going to show up." He replied without emotion, "Almost didn't." The security guard at the door gave me a hard time before letting me in. Then he removed his jacket, revealing a pure black short-sleeve shirt, displaying 2 tattooed arms, an azure dragon on the left and a white tiger on the right. The group of girls who were usually in charge, secretly watching us, all gasped in unison. The result was evident, and I covertly gave Ethan Clark a thumbs up. During the break, some boys were whispering about Ethan's tattoos. Why do I feel like his tattoos are reflecting light? Could they be fakes? I tensed up when I heard that. The man behind me leaned back in his chair, took off his sunglasses with one hand, and scorned. "Some people don't know anything, a bunch of bumpkins. This is the latest tattoo technology." I straightened my spine, backing him up. "Exactly. They don't know anything. A bunch of bumpkins." A group of red-faced boys started blaming each other. "I told you it wasn't a tattoo sticker. You insisted it was." "Nonsense. I knew it wasn't from the first glance. It was you who didn't believe me." No sooner had the parents left with the teacher to discuss test scores than my desk was crowded with people I usually didn't talk to, seemingly forgetting how they had previously bullied me. They buzzed around me. "Your brother is so cool," I said. "He's very fierce." "Your brother is so tall," I replied. "He's really good at fighting." "How come we never knew you had a brother before?" I told them. "He's in a gang, always in the midst of gunfire and bullets. He just took down the Black Tiger gang recently and now has some free time." I added, "He's moody and absolutely hates cliques and bullying, and he's quick to throw punches if he's upset." Impressionable middle schoolers believe whatever they hear, and with Ethan Clark's intimidating appearance and mysterious background, they took my word for everything. They were so stunned by my bluff, their eyes flickering uncertainly. Just as I was getting carried away with my exaggerations, Ethan Clark came back, his hand casually in his pocket, standing behind me. I quickly grabbed his hand and cried out in feigned panic, "Brother, stay calm. Let's talk it out. No need for violence. Don't shoot." Like a scattered flock, they all cleared out in an instant. He was at a loss. With his newfound notoriety and whatever he said to their parents, they steered clear of me from then on. I was so happy that I ate an extra bowl of rice that day. Yet the happiness was premature. Ethan Clark pointed to my math paper with a score of 17, his tone somber. "I didn't expect you to be an academic underachiever." My face flushed with embarrassment in an instant. Last month, during the math exam, they kept kicking my chair, demanding answers. Finally, in frustration, I wrote for only 5 minutes, and then blanked out. Being outstanding, silent, and having no one to rely on would only make my situation worse, so I've always tried to maintain an average profile and reduce my presence.